Welcome to Renegade Thinkers Unite, featuring the sharpest minds in marketing, inspirational case histories, and weekly insights you can apply to your business. Find out why top CMOs rank this podcast among their favorites. Now, here's your host, Chief Marketing Renegade, Drew Nizer.
Many years ago, and I'm talking many years ago, Renegade was actually in the video game business, and we created a game called Carrier Fortress at Sea that was based on a TV show by Discovery Channel. And I'm telling you this because there was a fact that I learned at that point that was pretty amazing. An aircraft carrier moving at full speed takes over a mile to come to a complete stop, even if they throw the engines in full reverse. So I'd share that story with you because big brands have a challenge, and I'm talking big brands. How do they change where they are and do it fast and do it in a way that doesn't completely disrupt the organization? So again, going back to that aircraft carrier, when they full stop, they put those engines in reverse, everything in that organization, which is the aircraft carrier, which is a city at sea, goes flying forward as this machine tries to come to a stop. So the analogy holds. So today, my guest is Alicia Tillman, who is a CMO of SAP, which is a $30 billion brand with 94,000 employees, 400,000 customers in 180 countries. And last year, Alicia Tillman took over the reins as CMO of SAP with a mission to transform the organization. And before I introduce Alicia, I want to tell you one thing that her CEO said, which is, we want to be a top 10 brand in the world. And I think it's interesting that he used the word brand, a top 10 brand in the world. So Alicia, welcome to the show, and let's talk about turning around aircraft carriers.
I look forward to it, Drew. Thanks for having me today.
So before we dive in, I looked at several of your interviews, and it was interesting to me that family came up a lot, and particularly your mother. And I'm just curious, what is it that you learned from her that really has sort of helped propel you in your career?
Thanks for the question. It's a great place to start because I'm a person that I think I learned through inspiration. I'm motivated by it, and my mom in particular it continues to be a huge inspiration in my life. And I think the one thing that she taught me is when you get knocked down, always get back up, because it's the hardest, but it's the most rewarding. And you will always get knocked down in life. But it's really more about what you do when you get back up. And, it's something that's always stayed with me. You're going to have a lot of fans, and you'll at the same time have a lot of critics, and use it as an opportunity to learn from it. But never let it keep you down. Use it to learn. Use it to be motivated, because it truly is what keeps you going and what keeps you on top. And that's what I keep the most, from my mom as inspiration and motivation.
I love that. I had my dad on episode, he's 92, bless his heart. I had him on episode 100. And one of the lessons that he shared was, in every life, a little rain must fall. And certainly from my own personal experiences, some of the best things happened to me as a result of some really bad things. So I certainly share that sentiment. And I'm just curious, because I know you're a mother as well. Have you figured out how to pass along that lesson or other lessons to your kids? It's hard.
It's hard, but absolutely. I have, two amazing kids. My daughter is 10 and my son is 8. And, we just are coming off of Bring Your Kids to Work Day this week. And I can tell you it's the one day of the year that my kids look forward to the most. I mean, even more so, dare I say, than holidays such as Christmas. And to me, that in itself says so much. They see what I do every day. They see the rewards. They can feel it when I'm down. But most of all, they want to be part of it. To have, my daughter in particular, look forward to the day where she can come to work with me more than any other day and write about it in class, or, talk about it in terms of what she's the most proud of when, you have to do the projects at school where you talk about what you want to be in life. And, to me, it's the role that I do, is a lesson in itself to my kids. And we have a very open household, and I do talk openly about the good days and the bad days because we all have them. And I do believe that, when you're a child, you see the world differently, obviously, than when you become an adult. But I want them to learn very early on that what you achieve in life comes with a lot of hard work.
Amen.
And amen. And, there's no free ride in this world. And, everything that I have achieved and I'm now able to give to my children is a result of, working long hours that I started. I mean, when I was 13 years old, I was out there, trying to earn money to come up with ideas. And then I look at, my daughter who, here she is 10 years old and she's passing out flyers around the neighborhood because she wants to start her own cupcake business. And that's what it's about. It's like, get out there and have an idea, and how can you earn something from it and pound that pavement. That's something that I've learned from my parents, and I've certainly learned from Bill McDermott, our CEO, who reminds us every day that you've got to get out there, get out on the street, shake hands, tell people about your product, what you want to become, because it is all about the hard work that gains you success in the world.
So it's funny. One of the advantages of having your own business is that you can give your kids internships. And both of my kids, who are now grown up, interned at Renegade and got to see Dad.
Awesome.
And it was really fun. And
that is so cool.
Yeah,
I love
one of them ended up saying, I don't want anything to do with this marketing world, and the other sort of embraced it full on, and it's amazing to watch. So it's funny, you brought up Bill McDermott, and I've actually seen him speak. I was at one conference or another, and he's a very inspiring guy. And I want to go back to this gauntlet that he threw down about having SAP become one of the top 10 brands. And he used the word brand. He didn't use the word company. I thought that was so interesting. And as a marketer, I'm sensitive to that. How did that impact your planning as you came on as CMO? That's a pretty high bar.
Yes, it certainly is, because of course, when I took the role, SAP was sitting at the number 21 spot. This is within the brand Z study, and 21's pretty good, but we had a ways to go to top 10, especially when you start getting into the top 20. And I will tell you, when he introduced me as the new CMO of SAP just over a year ago, it was in front of the company, and we were standing up there on stage together, and he announced this aspiration that he wanted me to help lead for the company. And you're absolutely right, Drew. The thing that struck me and motivated me was his focus on the brand, and his belief that the marketing organization could help propel us into becoming recognized as one of the top 10 most valuable. And I think in some ways it was both daunting, but in my mind, it was super motivating, because number one, here's a CEO who truly respects and believes in the contribution of marketing to a company. And you don't often get that. and him asking us to architect the strategy, because it's not just marketing that will enable our ability to become one of the 10 most valuable brands. Every functional group across the company needs to contribute to that success. But asking marketing to help architect that strategy says a lot about Bill and the company that we work for. And it was then, and it remains today, super inspiring. We set out immediately and architected a strategy. It started with really dissecting the characteristics that the top 10 brands have in common with each other. And there are incredible common traits that they all share. And we took a hard look at ourselves and looked at where we were contributing and where we had to work harder. We built a plan to work to attack that and to leverage more of what we felt we offered, but we're not necessarily putting at the forefront of how we showcase the SAP brand to the marketplace. We overemphasized in those areas, and after we put a lot of these things in motion, we now sit as the 17th most valuable brand in the world. So we've made it into the top 20 from 21. It was our highest growth rate since 2009, and we have a very, very focused strategy, as well as the entire marketing organization. We have partners across the full breadth and depth of SAP, all rowing together, because I think the beautiful thing is we all believe that we have what it takes to become it, and if we do make it there, we will become the first ever true B2B company that will become one of the 10 most valuable, because it's mostly all consumer household names. But I think that if we do a few things right and continue to focus on it hard, I think there's a path to enabling us to become that.
So interesting, all good so far. What can you describe in a very limited number of words? Because I know there was the run campaign existed, but I think you made an important sort of adjustment to that expresses the strategy. Can you articulate that? Because am I correct in saying, because it used to be the best run companies run on SAP. Now there's some additional words. Can you talk about those and how that really is the center of the strategy?
Absolutely. So you're right. We had this campaign tagline about a decade ago, and the best run really was more directed to product and operations. How do we build the best products to enable you to operationally run at your best? And if you think back to a decade ago and longer, so much of technology companies position themselves through their products and the performance of their products. It was sort of speeds and bits and bytes, if you will. That is how a lot of people thought. If you fast forward, though, to today, and this is the change that we fundamentally made, the one thing that was very clear to me is the best run SAP really resonated. That was something that really stuck with people. And in fact, there's many taglines that brands have had through the decades that become synonymous with your understanding of the brand, and the best run SAP did. So I wanted to bring it back because I wanted to keep something that was authentically SAP, which was very important to us as a brand. But I also, though, wanted to modernize the intention of the statement to what really is the most relevant to buyers today. And we changed it to say, the best run companies make the world run better. Because we as a brand really recognize that at the end of the day, technology is an enabler. And it's an enabler of how we power our customers' agendas. And businesses today are in the business of making the world a better place, regardless of what you do or the industry you're in or the products and the services that you deliver. It's all about making something better. And in a lot of cases, it's about making the environment better, our economy better, society's better. And that was the fundamental change that we made, which is, how do we really help our customers achieve their ultimate vision, which is to make the world run better? And so that's the change that we made.
Very cool. All right, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about how you actually brought this to life, because it's a wonderful promise. It's an audacious promise. It also sort of forces, in some ways, it says to your customers, hey, we expect you to help the world run better. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
You've been listening to another great interview on Renegade Thinkers Unite with Drew Neiser. But the value doesn't end there. As a listener, you can download a free ebook from Drew, Renegade Thinkers, interviews with 11 trailblazing CMOs any business can learn from. Top marketing thought leaders and proven executives from Time Warner, American Express, and Chico's, and others. Get your free copy at renegadethinkersunite.com/ebook. For listeners only at renegadethinkersunite.com/ebook.
Okay, we're back, and my guest is Alicia Tillman, and we've been talking about really what is essentially a purpose-driven reorientation of a massive company, not just the company, but also the customers of the companies, by throwing down the gauntlet and saying, let's make the world run better, which is compelling. We've talked on the show several times about purpose-driven brands with Ben Stewart of Bank of the West and several others. And so what I'm interested in now, Alicia, is let's talk about some specific ways that you brought that to life. I watched a lot of the videos that you did. I thought they were compelling, but let's talk about how you and how the orchestration of this new campaign went.
Absolutely. So one of the things that we made a pretty strong decision on when we were strategizing about the new campaign is we were going to tell our story through our customers. And every asset that we had in our campaign needed to be a showcase of a customer, because technology is an enabler and it needs to work hand in hand with the company and the people and their thoughts on what they're trying to impact. And so we highlighted and showcased a series of customers throughout the campaign. Beautiful stories of companies that are really working to make improvements in the world. One company in particular, Compartamos, is really working to change the financial capabilities that are offered to entrepreneurs in Latin America. Oftentimes, it's hard to gain the capital needed if you're an entrepreneur to be able to build your business and grow it successfully. And through the use of technology, SAP technology, they're able to close that gap and make it more possible for financial institutions to connect themselves with entrepreneurs to help accelerate their ideas and make entrepreneurialism something that becomes what people aspire to across Latin America. Another company is working to solve the clean water challenge that we have in India by enabling SAP technology to help find the means so that we can have the clean water opportunities and gain access to clean water. How we close that gap through technology is also something that we're doing with Vestas in particular there in India. And there were many, many more stories as well that talk about how we do that. And that's the exciting part about it. When you do it through a customer, the story becomes real because you can actually see the practical nature and the use cases of how your technology gets applied.
So we're going to link to those videos in the show notes, and I sort of wrote. I thought it was interesting as I looked at the list, from saving rhinos and elephants to water to earthquakes, monitoring to unbanked to wind to food waste, responsible supply. It looked like the UN's list of the biggest problems that the world faces was. When you looked at, because there are a lot of different issues that you could have addressed, And I imagine given the breadth of, the effect is you work with so many companies, you had a lot of stories to choose from. How did you choose these particular stories?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I will tell you, you mentioned the UN, and that is a lot of how we govern our contribution so that we can have an impact. So the UN's 17 Sustainable Development Goals, what we've done as an organization is we've looked very deeply at them. We have a beautiful partnership with the UN. And we looked at the goals in particular that really matter to us as a business in terms of how we are driving innovation, and which of our customers are also doing so that we can highlight and showcase where meaningful impact is happening. So for example, Sustainable Development Goal number 8 is focused on decent work and economic growth. And this aligns to a product that we created that really helps to bring transparency into the supply chain so that we can work to remove forced labor conditions that oftentimes exist in the supply chain and is plaguing the way that we have an ability to practice decent work and therefore lead to economic growth. And so we have many customers that are partnering with us to in fact use the technology to drive that transparency that they need so that they can in fact make a meaningful difference in their supply chain. And we can therefore show to the UN how the partnership with our technology and companies around the world is having an impact in their ability to achieve fairness as it relates to UN Sustainable Development Goal number 8. And there's many more cases like that, but I think it's all about how do you goal yourself and what are the frameworks that are accessible to us to enable us to do that. And as a company, we found that UN Sustainable Development Goals is one such framework that I think can allow us to make a meaningful impact.
Right. And it gives you a list, and they're a credible source of these things. Now, as I'm thinking about it, I went, because I was alerted to those, I went and looked at those. How did you make sure that a broad group of people, if we're talking about being a top 10 brand, we need reach, and you need expansive reach. How did you get that kind of reach?
Well, you're absolutely right. One of the things that I'll say and about a B2B brand in particular, the way you're kind of schooled in how to market in a B2B segment, and then how you begin to practice it when you come into the workforce, you typically create marketing programs and strategies that target your core buyer. In our case, our core buyer had been the CIO for many, many years. And then we began to grow through acquisition over the past decade, which put us into more buying segments. And so that we began to extend how we market it, but it was still direct to particular buyers of our portfolio of products. If we want to become a top 10 brand, though, and we're going to therefore then be competing against consumer brands, we have to, as a brand, go more mass market. We have to, as you said, have more reach, have more scale. So when we started to look at things such as our sponsorships portfolio, we started to expand partnerships with organizations such as the NBA and the NHL, a lot of things like Cirque du Soleil, beautiful partners that have incredible reach that puts you deeper into, yes, still your buyers are there, but there's also influencers that become present as well. And so we started last year to really expand and start to introduce our brand into more of those consumer-facing media platforms, because it's important that the SAP brand begins to become more understood, but equally important is the story that we're telling as we begin to introduce our brand into new platforms that we historically may not have been seen in before, and aligning ourselves to purpose and how we're driving a meaningful impact was a large part of the story that we began to tell in year one around the purpose of SAP and the impact that we're having on the world.
And Interesting. Okay, so big media properties, and I can just imagine with the NBA and the NHL, there's sort of lots of ways that you can amortize the cost of that investment with entertainment and events and other things that sort of bring customers involved and employees involved. So that makes sense, and that answers that riddle. One of the things that happened, I interviewed Stephen Tisdale of State Street, and they did the famous statue of the fearless girl. And it was a symbol of what they were trying to do, which is to get women on boards. And because they showed through their studies that board of directors that had women on it and more diversity on it outperformed those that didn't. So it was a smart business thing. But what happened is they also had to look internally at themselves and say, oh, well, do we have as many women in our executive platform? Do we have state-of-the-art, anti-discrimination policies? So I'm curious, as you put this out there and say, hey, we're helping make the world run better, and you're doing all these things, how did you put the lens on yourself and say, hey, how can SAP itself? I mean, were there things that you had to sort of look inside and make sure that you were, if you will, drinking your own champagne?
Yeah, and you mentioned gender equality, which has always been a core focus of SAP. In fact, we have put goals in place for our brand, of which we continue to exceed each year in terms of the number of women that we want to have in leadership across the company. We are amongst the highest in the technology industry, which we're very proud of. We have not only Bill, our CEO, but the entire board of SAP that has embraced and frankly defined the goals that we've put in place as a brand as it relates to women in leadership in particular. And so that's the first thing that I would say, as you talked about women in leadership positions in particular, which has always been a challenge, certainly in the technology industry, and that of which we are proud of in terms of how we are, and always have, I will say, as a company, been committed to gender equality first and foremost. But the other thing that I would say, Drew, is that, I mean, we're a 47-year-old brand. And when we had Hasso Plattner, one of our founders, and 4 of his colleagues who left IBM 47 years ago to go and start something that they felt could change the world companies could operate, they also had this vision of helping the world run better and improving people's lives. I mean, that's been the purpose of SAP since our founding. And when we think about things such as decent work and gender equality and good health and well-being, affordable and clean energy, how we focus on issues such as climate action, and peace and justice and equality across social rights. And these are things that we innovate for. We have alignment on at a company level. And, I mentioned our partnership with the UN. Not only do we internally innovate and goal ourselves in terms of how we run SAP as a company, but it is also, as we've talked about, so much of what we work in partnership with our customers to help enable for them as well. And so it's a company that's always been very committed, to practicing what we're working to enable for our customers. And, I think it's something that we're very proud of. And, I can speak as a senior leader of the organization. One of the reasons, certainly why I speak about how proud I am to work for this company.
Excellent. Okay, we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to sort of focus a little bit on the future with a quick dip in the past. Okay, stay with us. Okay, we're back, and we've been talking with Alicia Tillman, who is the CMO of SAP. And we've been talking about brand transformation, and sometimes big brands, and there's a great brands do great things, and we've been talking a lot about the purpose-driven, but sometimes brands do things that are unexpected. And so I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that moment when Nick Vital showed up in the Wall Street Journal.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. Yes, so Nick Vital is a name that really lit up social media earlier this year. And, to tell you a little bit about it, we're continuing to make a brand transformation at SAP. Last year, we put a tremendous amount of emphasis on our purpose, our authenticity of as a brand, to really reintroduce that side of SAP to the world, and to remind everyone about the commitment that we made 47 years ago that still absolutely remains true today in terms of how we work to build technology that helps enable change in the world. As we continued on, and now we've moved into 2019, we're coming off of an acquisition of a company called Qualtrics that we finalized the acquisition for in the early part of 2019. And this acquisition enabled us to begin to pivot the brand more strongly into this world of experience management, and this belief that business today is often won and lost based on the quality of your experience. And when you can combine operational data that really talks about the performance of your company together with experiential data, the feelings and the sentiment from your customers, you really combine that and create this new category of experience management that we believe is really what companies are in the business of today. And so to be able to tell that story, we took out a 3-page spread earlier this year in the Wall Street Journal. And it was an open letter to everyone from a consumer. His name was Nick Vital, who basically aired a lot of his frustrations as well as things that he liked around things that he experiences day to day in his life. Everything from the hotel breakfast that you get and how much he loves the waffle station, to the comfort of airline seats, to the quality of hamburgers that he eats. It was a very fun showing of his feelings across a variety of experiences that all of us can relate to. Well, Nick was a fictional character that was intended to really connect with people so that we can start have our voices heard. And that was really the intent of it. And then it kind of moved on page after page to then lead to this headline that says the future of business has feelings, because we need to start getting much closer to the feelings of our consumers, so much that if you think about this statistic that came out from Bain & Company recently, 80% of CEOs believe their company provides a superior customer service, but only 8, less than 10, of customers agree that they're getting great experiences. So think about the experience gap that we're living in right now. And so we really wanted to use this. I will tell you, Drew, the social feedback. We had people who were calling for Nick's presidential candidacy in 2020 because he resonated so much with how people feel. And then we had angry people who were upset because he wasn't actually a real person. We had people trying to dig through the white pages to call Nick. They wanted to actually, some people offered to pay him back for the cost of the Wall Street Journal article because they believed so much in what he was representing. And so it was a hit, but it allowed us to begin to once again, tell a much different story than you're used to hearing from SAP.
Yeah, and so I love all of those aspects to it. If anybody's ever bought the Wall Street Journal knows that 3 pages of advertising space is a big investment and a big statement, and to do it without a brand logo on it takes some courage. And I imagine there was a moment where people might have thought you were crazy to do that.
Yes, there were definitely a few that
there had
thought
to be.
that.
Yeah. And so, okay. So, it's an audacious move. There's so many interesting components to this thing. One is, first, it gets a conversation going. It, as you said, it allows you to pivot to a different area. And as you're talking about experience management as a new category, it's funny because I'm remembering our first interview where we were saying, let's make procurement awesome. I'm wondering if now this pivot is from let's make ERP awesome to now we're making experience management. And do you see that as the category that you were not just creating, but leading?
Absolutely. And Bill McDermott, our CEO, says the same every day. And it's important that we evolve and even stay several steps ahead of where we believe the marketplace is going. And the reality is we live in an experience economy. 80% of customers say that they will switch brands based on a poor customer experience. Similarly, there's recent research from Gartner that has said that by 2020, 81% of marketers expect to be competing mostly or completely on the basis of customer experience. And then that goes hand in hand with the research from Bain that I shared a moment ago, where you see a tremendous experience gap between what CEOs believe their companies provide and how much consumers agree with that. And so when you see all of that, it really indicates that we live and need to think about how we're winning in this experience economy. And you mentioned ERP. That is a segment that SAP led and created 47 years ago. You think of CRM also as a category. You think of T&E as a category. There's many categories that have been defined through the years. We truly believe that experience management is the next category. We are building it, and we absolutely intend to lead it, because at the heart of your ability also to enable a great experience is technology. And a lot of it, Drew, is about access to data and turning that data into intelligence to help your company run better. And when you have this formula of a purpose as an organization, enabled by data, which drives intelligence to allow you to build an operation or run your company at its best, together with your ability to really capture the feelings of your customer to help inform then how you operate, it's a perfect formula for what we believe we're in right now, the experience economy, and this creation of this new segment, which we call experience management.
So, and it all makes sense. I'm buying in. I'm wondering if analysts like Gartner and Forrester are going to start to issue studies on the experience management category, and if there are any, so it's one thing to say there's a category, but we need the analysts to embrace it. How are they doing on this?
They are with us. We've made this, we absolutely understand that we need them to validate this and give it some credibility. And there's no denying the period that we are in today in our marketplace. We absolutely live in an experience economy. Having Forrester and Gartner in particular really drive credibility around that. There's not a brand out there, certainly your more innovative, market-leading brands that are not talking about or innovating around the experience. And when we talked earlier about one of the characteristics that enable you to become a top 10 brand, that is one of the 5 that we've identified. It is about how brands today are leading and creating exceptional, unrivaled experiences. And at one time, that was something that was only limited to a few companies that were there setting the bar on service and experience. I believe, and we at SAP believe, that this is going to become an obligation, something that if you want to survive, you've got to be constantly defining and redefining what it means to drive an exceptional, memorable experience. And I think it's a little bit also what we talked about before, when Bill had said to me, he wants to become a top 10 brand, and the notion of that word brand, because I believe that we've moved from once what was companies leading with products, now moving into brands that help to govern and manage your lifestyle. So we're going from kind of product marketing into lifestyle brand marketing, which is really at the core of how you drive exceptional experiences today.
Really a very interesting sort of journey that you've been on, and I'm as we sort of wrap up this episode, I'm curious what's next now. How do you make this realer, if you will, if that was a word? How do you continue to show that not only your customers are leading the experience economy in good, meaningful ways, but that SAP is actually in and of itself delivering an exceptional experience?
It's going to come down to how well we tell our story. And that is a shift that we've been on for about a year and a half now, and one that we're going to continue to shift very aggressively in because we have what it takes. We have what it takes to win. We have what it takes to succeed. We've got to focus on how we tell that story that's relevant to our consumers today, really hones in on things that matter to them. You know, you're going to see a lot more of a Nick Vital type of marketing tactic that we're going to put in the marketplace. Something that has a tone that's approachable, it's fun, it's funny, it's relevant, hits on things that matter to people, and then showcases how SAP technology can help to enable the experiences that we want. And so the marketing around that and the tactics we use and the way that we tell that story, it matters more than ever. And marketing is at the forefront of that. You know, when I talked about, our ability as marketers to architect the path and the journey for how we become one of the 10 most valuable brands in the world, there's so many things that rest on our shoulders to help lead. How we tell our story and where we tell that story is absolutely the role of marketing, and we're ready for it. You're going to see more of it this year, and I think we're going to keep charging down that path to achieve our aspirations.
Very cool. All right. I want to take a second to summarize some of the things that I see as critical here for the CMOs who are listening who may not be at the largest companies in the world or trying to be the top 10 brand, but I think these things are relevant to you. One, as a CMO, pick your CEO very carefully. If they're not behind you 100% and don't have a vision, it's going to be hard for you to succeed. Two, it helps if you can set a big, audacious, hairy goal, the old bag goal thing, because that gives a direction for everybody. Now, when you set that big goal, it really helps if that's aligned with a purpose, because that has, as I've talked about at length on the show, implications for employees, for customers, for the kind of customers that you want to work for. And it sets the bar. And particularly if you're a large company, you need to, because you have all sorts of other things at play, including governments that are looking at your business. So you need to be a purpose-driven brand. One of the things that Alicia points out that I think is so important is that when you're doing your story, you're not the hero. Your customer is the hero. I've said that before on the show, but if you go and look at those videos, you'll see exactly what I mean, and they will be on the show notes. Then once you've made this giant promise, you're starting to tell the story, it helps if you can do something disruptive and unexpected, because there's this sort of moment of cognitive dissonance, I hope I'm using that term correctly, where you have to get people to say, wait, that's not the SAP that I knew, that's not the company that you have to do something different to disrupt, like an open letter. And by that way, all that I heard Alicia say in the last few minutes of the show was about making the brand approachable, a human, a participant in the world. So I think it was an incredibly instructive and important conversation. Alicia, thank you so much for being on the show.
And thank you for having me, Drew. It was wonderful to have this conversation with you.
Now, I wonder, in my wrap-up, did I miss something? Is there one other lesson that you would like to impart to the listeners?
I would just say, really understand your brand. Every brand was started with a purpose. and with a vision. And oftentimes you lose that at times along the way. Leadership changes, acquisitions, growth strategies. But go back to your roots, because consumers today are interested in authenticity, truth, and purpose. And if you spend the time to really understand how your company was founded and what the vision was to change, you'll find beautiful stories always, because every company was founded that way. And so my advice would be, go back and study that. That's how I spent the first 3 months when I took on this role as CMO of SAP. And it's been incredibly rewarding, because it's all about our authentic truth. And I'm telling you, it's what wins every single time.
And it's a great place for us to wrap up. So to the listeners of the show, I'm so grateful that you spend the time with us. As always, feel free to send me a note on LinkedIn, or I got a text the other day. And so text me 917-679-8852. Let me know not only what you thought about the episode, but ideas that you have for future shows. And until next time, keep those renegade thinking caps on and strong.
This has been Renegade Thinkers Unite, but it doesn't end there. Just go to renegadethinkersunite.com for more and subscribe to the show. That way, you'll never miss an episode. We'll talk with you next time on Renegade Thinkers Unite.